You know me, I am an Arch user. By the way, whilst the idea of Arch being a bleeding edge or cutting edge distro is basically just a meme by people who don't actually use Arch and don't realize that sometimes things actually do get held back, it does tend to move considerably faster than distros like Ubuntu, or especially distros like Debian stale. So Arch does tend to identify some bad development practices when it comes to dependency management. And a couple of days ago, a few people sent this my way. Proton Bridge fails to start with Qt 6.8. What is my mic arm doing? I really need a new one. Trying to run Proton Bridge on a system running with Qt 6.8, e.g. Arch Linux, results in the following errors. Could not load QML component, and all of these logs right here. It runs as expected with Qt 6.7. Now, this is not the only version of this report. The person who reported this is one of the package maintainers over on Arch Linux, and it was reported over there as well. Now, Qt 6.8 is very, very new, only releasing on the 8th of October, so a lot of distros don't actually have it yet. Basically, only the really fast-moving rolling releases like your Arch Linuxes, your Gen 2s, and things like that actually have the package. And even though it is their experimental branch, last I checked, Debian Sid didn't have it either, only being on 6.7.2. I unfortunately don't have a possible solution to provide, but given that Proton Bridge runs properly with Qt 6.7, this is most likely a compatibility issue with Qt 6.8, e.g. usage of Qt instructions that got modified or deprecated in Qt 6.8. I wouldn't say deprecated because deprecated still implies that it's still in the codebase, but actually removed after a deprecation. Whilst he may not have been completely clear on the issue, he was certainly onto something, but he didn't realize just how bad of an issue it actually was. Now, being from a maintainer of the Arch package, it wasn't just a single person having this problem. A bunch of other people also reported the exact same issue, because if it's broken for the Arch maintainer, it's probably going to be broken for you as well. Somebody even went so far as holding back all of its dependencies just to make sure this one application is going to work. For the record, this will make it work, but it is extremely not recommended to do this, especially if you run anything else built with Qt 6. If you're a KDE user, this is going to end up holding back the entirety of KDE as well, so be very, very careful about holding packages back. Since there weren't any developers responding, someone went and reached out to support, but then a dev also chimed in as well. But the dev left out a very crucial bit of information, so I'll show you that in just a sec. Hi everyone, thank you for using Proton. I understand how incompatibility with a distribution can lead to annoyance, but it is infeasible to support all distributions on top of two other platforms, Windows and macOS. Completely reasonable statement. That is why we had to draw a line, and the officially supported Linux distributions are the latest non-LTS versions of Ubuntu and Fedora. Bridge is not tested in any other distribution. Major dependency updates are driven by the supported operating system. Now, based on what they provide in the repo directly from these developers, this seems to be a lie, and I don't entirely know why you would make it, but I'll get into that in just a bit. The options are, try to downgrade to Qt 6.7, try to use CLI as was mentioned above, use a supported Linux distribution, or consider switching to the Proton Mail desktop app that doesn't use Qt. I hope it helps resolving the issue. Thank you for the report. It did, in fact, not resolve the issue. Now, what was left out of this message? Well, let's go back up to the support email. Please note that at the moment, we are building the Bridge app with Qt 6.4.3. Now, what is that version? Well, 6.4.3 was released on March 16th, 2023, and whilst that might not sound like that long ago, it was, 18 months ago? I know, time really does fly. This has been EOL since September of 2023, so at this point, it's a year EOL. And I shouldn't need to say this to developers, but considering things like Discord exist, I think I do. EOL is not a suggestion. It's not like, oh yeah, you should just, maybe stop using it. You can just keep using it if you want to. It's totally fine. If something is connected to the internet, you shouldn't be using EOL software. I know there is this dumb meme idea that floats around the software world where if something doesn't update, that means it's stable. No, that means it's stale. If you have a good, stable system, it is something that is frequently being updated, not with feature updates, not with feature removals, but with security updates to ensure it is still safe to continue using. This is what happens with the Linux kernel. This is what happens with a good LTS distro. This is the way you do it. And would you look at that? 6.4.3 has a bunch of unpatched CVEs. Now, are these CVEs relevant to what Proton Bridge is doing? I don't know. However, I have a feeling the developers don't know either. And if you want to hold back on an old Qt version, it's something that is still supported, they have LTS releases. I think the funniest thing about this entire thread is most of the conversation is actually reasonable and is actually on topic. You don't have people that are just like yelling at the developers, being angry at them for no reason. There is a little bit of that, but for the most part, it is all technical discussion on the actual topic. So this response at the bottom here is very amusing to me. Thank you everyone for sharing your feedback. Unfortunately, I cannot add more than what I've already shared. Arch Linux is not a Proton-supported operating system. Updating Qt just for Arch Linux has negative implications for other Bridge users. Proton Mail Bridge works correctly on the latest version of Ubuntu and Fedora Workstation, Ubuntu 24.10, Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, and Fedora Workstation 40. If you encounter any issues on any supported operating systems, please contact Proton customer support directly. Technical heavy questions will be forwarded to the development team. This completely misses any of the points that were brought up throughout the thread, like the fact that you shouldn't actually be using 6.4.3 because this is an unsupported non-LTS version. Now, there's something very funny about saying it works on the latest version of Ubuntu and Fedora. Those distros don't actually package the application. The packages for Ubuntu and Fedora are actually provided by the project itself, and the instructions on the project's website direct you to go and use those packages. So this is the one for Ubuntu using the deb file, this is the one for Fedora using the RPM. That's because these packages actually bundle 6.4.3, as in they ship 6.4.3 with them rather than using your Qt dependency installed on your system. Ubuntu 24.10 ships 6.6.2, which is still 6 months EOL, but it's not an entire year EOL. And Fedora 40 ships 6.7.2, which is just barely EOL by about 2 weeks, because this is the latest version before 6.8 releases. Not even Ubuntu 24.04 LTS ships 6.4.3. It ships 6.4.2. Now here's the funny thing about Arch Linux. Whilst they don't make the package that's in the Arch repos, to say they don't support Arch is not entirely accurate. So this is the Proton Mail Bridge for Linux installation page on Proton's own website. The app is available for deb, RPM, and package build-based distributions covering most derivatives, Debian and derivatives like Ubuntu and Mint, Red Hat and derivatives like CentOS and Fedora, and Arch and derivatives like Manjaro. Follow our instructions to set up Bridge on Debian-based distros, RPM-based distros, and Arch-based distributions using the package build. Where do we find the package build? Well, let's go to the homepage here. Let's go to the releases section. And right here, they generate an official package build. Now, the package build basically just takes the Debian package and then just installs that. But still, they provide a package build, so the guy responding doesn't even realize that they support Arch. Now, when we're in the realm of bundle dependencies and distros going and unbundling them, things can get a little bit weird. The way that things are expected to generally work on Linux is most of the time you shouldn't be bundling dependencies unless there is a really, really good reason to do so. Like in the case of Hyperland back when it was on WL Roots, it was using a bundled version of WL Roots because it was using the Git version. It didn't have features in the stable release yet. That doesn't, at least from what I can tell, seem to be what they're doing here. It seems like they've built against an older version but haven't been managing their dependency system properly, and now that that version is so old, distros that are unbundling it are now having issues getting it working because something changed between 6.4.3 and 6.7 or 6.8, and now the package doesn't work. As a workaround to this, the Arch maintainer is just considering using their bundle dependency and just having it function, because having it function with an old dependency is probably better than trying to make it function with a new one that's not going to work because the developers don't want to actually update their dependencies internally. But the other option is, considering that it's such an out-of-date dependency at this point, just getting it out of the main repos and just dropping it back into the AUR. I don't know what the plan is going to be. There have been cases of bundle dependencies where they are kind of out of date being in the Arch repo, so it wouldn't be a first. It sort of depends on whether the maintainer actually wants to deal with it. But there is a very stupid workaround. Hello everyone, I noticed that if you don't close the error pop-up, so this one right here, the bridge still runs in the background, and you can send and receive emails. This should be a workaround while waiting for the fix. So, because they've properly separated out their GUI and their backend, even if the GUI dies, the backend stuff that you actually want to have working will still work. Now, it is one thing if a distro like Ubuntu or Debian Stale is shipping out-of-date dependencies and trying to ship a more up-to-date package and things are breaking. But I don't see any reason why you would intentionally bundle an out-of-date dependency, and the latest version of the project was released 3 weeks ago, bundle an out-of-date dependency when the distros that you say that you're supporting ship newer versions, with the exception of 24.04 LTS, but that's an LTS. That's what LTS releases do. If I'm gonna complain about when Discord does it with Electron, I'm gonna complain when random applications do it with Qt as well. What do you think? Do you think that Arch should just go and build against the dependency bundled with it? Do you think the bundle dependency should be updated? Or do you think they should do, the thing that most other applications do on Linux, which is make sure things are working with the system dependencies? I would love to know. So if you like the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Pay, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and do I make a joke about Proton being a honeypot?